And welcome back to the first edition of the ESBR Roundtable. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Greg and Doey from ESBRboxing.com. How are we all doing?
I'm good,
Very well,
man.
Sam. Thank you very much for having us.
So today, obviously this is the first video. We're hoping it'll be quite like a regular thing. We're just going to talk about some of the big discussions in boxing at the moment, give our opinions, give our thoughts on some of the hot topics. So our first topic of the day is how dangerous is Alexander Usyk for Anthony Joshua? What do you guys think the biggest threat that he poses is?
Honestly, I think that Usyk could stink the place out and run away quite a wide winner against Joshua if Joshua's not careful. I think he's super talented. The question marks I've got is he's 34. He's not set the world on fire at heavyweight as of yet, but Joshua could only wish to have the IQ and the brain that Usyk's got. And I just think that if Usyk does his homework correctly, I could see him beating Joshua quite handily if his age hasn't caught up with him. But there's a lot of question marks there, isn't there? 34, stepping up from cruiserweight. It's going to be a big ask, but if anybody can do it and do it in fashion, I think it's Usyk.
Doey, what do you put on that fight? Obviously, Chisora did a lot better than everyone was thinking he was going to do. How much weight do you put into that performance?
To be honest, that's one of the first things that came to mind, is that because Usyk didn't blow away Chisora, he didn't toy with him as much as we thought he would. I think that if he beats Joshua, then it makes Joshua look bad, and if Joshua beats Usyk, it's it was only Usyk. He hardly even beat Chisora, and there's going to be loyal fans out there that think Chisora won. So I just think that I'm stealing a little bit of Greg's thunder here, is that it's high risk and a relatively low reward fight. I mean, what does Joshua get out of the Usyk fight? Except for, as boxing fans, we know he beats like a great. He beats a serious guy. But it's just to keep a belt. It's not massive money. I don't know. What are you saying about high risk and low reward, Greg?
I really agree with you. I think it's one of those fights like you say, Usyk, did he underestimate Chisora? It's difficult because I think there was nothing in the Joseph Parker fight, there was nothing in the Dillian White fight, and I don't know if Usyk just thought, I'm too good for him and I'll show it in this fight. Time will tell. I'll just stand around him. And when a guy really believes in himself, like Chisora, you need to be really, really up for a fight like that or it gets messy. But I totally agree with you. I think that it's high risk, low reward. Everybody knows who Alexander Usyk is in boxing. If you go and ask the man in the street who is Alexander Usyk and they're a casual boxing fan, they might not know. So I agree with you. I think it's high risk, low reward.
Do you think that Joshua's more fearful than Chisora? So Chisora just pretty much walked forward. He leaned on him. He roughed him up a little bit. He sort of old manned him. I don't see Joshua doing that because Joshua wants to be seen as quite classy, a bit of a boxer, and he's not the same as Chisora. So he might even get less success.
Yeah, I know. And obviously AJ's got a lot more to lose than Chisora. If you think of Chisora, that was his big moment. That's, if anything, Usyk had more to lose in that fight with what we see as his progression in the heavyweight division. Whereas for Chisora, he's always been that gatekeeper where if he wins, you never know, it could have been him fighting for a world title or suddenly is in that question for the world title. I know I spoke to Zhilei Zhang 2 weeks ago and he said that if the fight goes the distance, Usyk will win and wipe the floor with him. Is that something that you guys think as well? Or do you think AJ can outbox Usyk on the night?
Two-part answer. One, Joshua can't outbox Usyk. Like, not over 12 rounds, he just can't. And I'm a Joshua fan, but he can't. But number two, Britain's become the place where people don't get results. Like, we used to be like, oh, you go abroad and all that. It's not that. It's, if you come to Britain, you probably aren't getting the result. And is Usyk the same over here? Does he get a result? I don't know. Sad that we got to think about
A very, very good point. Yeah.
Because that is
Very
always
good point.
something we thought about going. You don't want to go to Germany when Klitschko's fighting because you're never going to get a decision. You've got to knock him out. But is the tide turning now where fighters won't want to come to the UK because they're scared even if they do put on a great performance, they won't get the result. That's something as well that I haven't thought about actually.
So, but in terms of boxing ability,
Tough one.
Usyk's on a different level, isn't he? But again, another thing we sort of slightly talked about in our chats and before we've come on today, that Usyk was a different level at cruiserweight. Like, how much of that carries up? Like, he's not an almighty powerhouse. Has he slowed a little bit? It's just, there's still unanswered questions. You can't come into heavyweight and he gets a good win against Chisora. Someone's going to have to help me here. Who did he fight in America?
Witherspoon.
That's Witherspoon.
Yeah. And again, relatively unconvincing. But Usyk's good, though. So
yeah,
I know one of these guys, though, when he's required to step up, he does it without even thinking about it. If he goes into a fight and he knows he's going to win, he's probably one of these guys that thinks, you know what, I can underperform and I'm still going to win. But when his back's really against it, I think he's one of these guys that can just go to a whole different level. But like I said earlier, 34 and he's stepping up. And I suppose the best evidence that we can look at is people say don't compare amateur to pro. But I don't know if you guys have seen much about the World Series of Boxing, where it was like the top guys in the country were fighting 5-round fights with no head guards, smaller gloves to get ready for the pros. And Usyk quite convincingly outboxed Joe Joyce. So he showed signs that he can outbox a big guy who's built like Anthony Joshua. It's just a matter of at 34 and still do that and do it to a confident world heavyweight champion. Big question to answer.
Yeah, Greg, how much do you think Anthony Joshua's mindset will have changed? Obviously, he thought that he'd be going into this Tyson Fury fight, and now he's going into the Usyk fight. Obviously, they pose different threats. How much would his mindset have changed from that?
Yeah, I think he'll be more nervous for the Usyk fight because he might be telling us all that I'm not scared of anyone. Alexander Usyk, I've fought guys like him before. He's never fought anybody like Usyk before. Never fought a guy like Usyk before. I think it's a bit of kidology, and I don't know if we can even pair it back to Andy Ruiz. But if you guys remember AJ when he was coming through, he was a bit of a killer through hard, powerful combinations, and a lot of the time we don't see that anymore. There's something missing there with those hard, powerful combinations. You look at him fighting guys like Dillian White, even early on in his career, where he was fighting guys he was expected to beat. But there's something about him. He tries to be too. I don't know if it's down to Rob McCracken, but his style's changed in a way. I don't think it suits him. I think he needs to box behind a hard jab, go hard combinations, and really put a hurting on these guys. Because you just know that Joshua's going to come out and he's going to try and out jab us at times. I think that's crazy. I think it's so silly, but we'll soon find out.
Yeah, and hopefully it won't be too long till that fight happens. Hopefully it does happen because it hasn't actually been fully announced yet. But I know everyone can look forward to seeing your prediction video and seeing what you think will happen on fight week. So now I'm going to move on to the other side of the heavyweight division and the heavyweight world titles. And Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder was announced last week for the 24th of July. Obviously, a lot of people in the boxing world are saying that after the last two performances that Wilder has no chance. I'll start with Doey. Do you think that Wilder does have a legitimate chance in this fight?
I don't know. I flip back and forth. So at the end of the second fight, I wasn't sure Wilder would fight again. I just felt that he didn't take that, he didn't get knocked out, sort of, he didn't get put down hard or anything, but he just got beat up. I feel like he lost a bit of himself, lost a bit of his soul almost. And I wasn't sure he'd come back. And I was convinced at the time that actually, every time they fight, 100 times, Tyson Fury's going to do the same thing. He's got his number. But maybe it's the fight hype. Maybe it's, seeing tweets. Maybe it's watching a few clips. I don't know. But you just can't ever discount Wilder. That punch, I don't know. I feel like Fury's not as switched on, not as sharp as maybe he was the second time. And boxing's like this, isn't it? That something upsets the apple cart. Like, and Wilder's got the biggest thing in boxing that can upset. So if he catches Fury, I don't know. I can't commit, boys. I'm rubbish. I don't know. Turn to the.
Greg, what about you? What do you think? Do you think Wilder has any more of a chance in this fight than the last two?
You know, I don't know why. I know we kind of touched on this earlier, but I just see Wilder getting beat up and knocking Fury out. I don't know why. I just think that you've got to have a bit of fear in your belly when you go into a fight. You've got to have something that keeps you sharp. And I think that Fury has got to the point where he's disrespecting Wilder and he doesn't believe he's the same guy. And they always say the last thing to leave you in boxing is your punch. And the one knockout that stands out for me, it's one of the scariest knockouts I've ever seen, is, do you guys remember when Wilder knocked out Dominic Breazeale?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, I thought he was dead at first. I was like, whoa. Like, that is scary, scary power. If he's not lost that power, he's still got that. And I just think if Fury goes in, his hands down, sticking his tongue out, disrespecting him, I can just see him walking onto one. I really can. I don't see him getting up this time. But
You made me think there, Greg. How many times have we talked boxing and whatever else, and you often make the point that fighters who fight with a bit of fear, like, have that little bit more. One example out of the countless we've talked about, we talked about Calzaghe versus Lacey way back when, and the short story was Lacey was the favourite, obviously, and everyone knows that whole story. But Calzaghe was scared. He wanted to pull out. Not scared of the man, but scared with injury. And Lacey had this big reputation, and Calzaghe had that little bit where he's fighting on fear, and it was, in my eyes, and I'm very biased, one of the best performances in boxing history. But that little bit of fear, how does that help Wilder on July 24th?
Very quickly, to touch on what you said there, Joe Calzaghe, Jeff Lacey for me is the greatest British boxing performance in history. It was unbelievable that night, and he was scared, like you said. He said, I'm sure I've seen something where he said about a week before the fight, he said to his dad, Dad, I'm scared of this guy. I don't believe in myself, and he was wanting to pull out, like you said, and his dad said, see if you pull out of this fight, you can forget boxing, because he's so many injuries, pulled out of so many fights before. He's like, you cannot pull out of this, and it was the best thing that ever happened to him. So now to contradict myself, I think fear may not work in a guy like Deontay Wilder's favour. I think he needs to go in believing that he's got this one shot power. He's not a boxer, Deontay Wilder. He's not somebody who is going to masterclass outbox you, but he needs to go in believing, I've got this one shot and I could put you in your back any time with it. If he doesn't believe that, I think it could make the night harder for him. But something tells me that I think he will be confident, believe it or not, Wilder. Whether it's delusion or not, I don't know. But to answer your question, I think that if he goes in with a bit of fear, I think it'll work out worse for him, because that means he's doubting his power. And without being disrespectful, I think that's the only thing he's got.
Good point.
I think for me, Fury holds the key to this whole fight. How he approaches this fight is how it will play out. I think if he goes in with the same game plan as the second fight, where he actually, to the shock of everyone, walks down Deontay Wilder and really closes that space and doesn't allow Wilder to throw these big punches, I think he will win the fight again. But if he gets a bit cocky and a bit, as you say, put his hands down, tries to play with him, does the Muhammad Ali on the ring and all this, I think he leaves himself open to, like the first fight, catching a punch. So I think it is really on his approach and his mentality and the way if he goes in there and thinks, look, I schooled him last time, I don't need to, I can do this again, I can play with him, I think he's in for a tough night, and a tougher night than I think anyone expects. But I do think if he walks him down and really shuts down that space again, I think it will be another really, really tough night for Wilder. How do you guys think? Obviously, if you look at the way Wilder and AJ were the two big champions in the heavyweight division, and obviously they both suffered big losses. Andy Ruiz on the one hand, and Wilder on the other. There was a clear, and Fury on the other. There was a clear contrast in the way they both approached that loss. Obviously, AJ kind of went for the respectful, he's the better man, went off and closed himself away, ready for the rematch in Saudi Arabia. Whereas Wilder did a lot more talking. There was every excuse under the sun, wasn't there? There was the costume, there was the Fury cheating. Do you think that could play into that confidence that you're talking about? Maybe he doesn't actually still believe that he lost that fight legitimately, or was that all an act and he just was trying to save face?
I think Greg said about being deluded at one point. He used, somebody here used the word deluded. It's in my head anyway. And let's just have this right. Some of the stuff that Wilder came out with was shameful, like ridiculous comments, and not just him. Fan bases and some people doing it just for the attention and whatever. That's fine, but some of the excuses were just ridiculous. Like, and then being like, oh, he was fine to go on, the towel was wrong coming in, and I don't know. But to the point there, yeah, I think that the guy's crazy enough to believe that he didn't lose. Like, I don't know. He probably doesn't even chalk it up as a loss. So, yeah, so with that in mind, with that in mind, I mean, maybe his confidence isn't shook at all. Maybe he's just going to walk in there and think, yeah, I'm getting him again. Like, I say again, but he'll catch him like he did in the first fight. My short prediction, though, is I think Fury beats him. I just think Fury's too good for him, and I just think he'll have enough again. So Fury to win is my short prediction.
Yeah.
By knockout.
And you know what? It's hard to argue with that, because if you put it down to talent alone, it's not close. When Sam was talking there a minute ago, before we get to the point that you said there, it reminded me of something. I don't know why this fight jumped out at me, but when we're talking about being overconfident and things, do you guys remember when Lennox Lewis fought Hasim Rahman in South Africa, and he jabbed him, and the way that he stepped back and he was smiling at Rahman threw that right hand and knocked him out? Oh man, I can't see something like that coming again. And it's not because I think Wilder's better than Fury. I think Fury's street's better than Wilder. But the beauty of boxing is you only have one. And if you land that one, it doesn't matter if you've lost the other 11. It's one shot. But it's very difficult to predict at this point. I like to see training camps. I like to see press conferences. I like to see final face-offs. I think there's a lot to be said from those. But yeah, I agree with the way. I think Wilder's good, and I think he still believes that he's capable of beating Fury. But the final point I'll make here is I thought it was genius what Wilder done in the first press conference. The way to wind Tyson Fury up, don't answer him back. If you don't answer him back, that'll get them. And you could see like Fury, the way he was looking at him, and you were like, give me a bite. And Wilder was sitting with those earphones in, and I think that would have pissed him off more than anything, if I'm being honest with you. So it'll be intriguing. I'm looking forward to it.
I know the whole boxing world was pretty split on that whole headphone thing. Some people thought it was a sign of weakness. Some people, like Greg, thought it was actually a good move. Doey, did you agree what did you make of that press conference?
I didn't even watch it. Genuinely didn't, because I saw a snippet online and it was like Fury just sort of I saw a snippet and I saw like part of the face-off thing.
Oh yeah. Fury
just sort of standing there, top off, Wilder headphones on, not saying anything, and a few replies being like, Wilder's crazy, blah, blah. I just didn't watch it. I don't know. I really don't know, to be honest. It's one of those things, you read it whichever way you want. You read it as he's not bothered and he's like a laser, he's focused, or you read it as he's scared and that last time Fury got in his head and now he doesn't want that to happen. Or, I don't know. I mean, like I said, quite openly, Wilder's crazy. I haven't got a clue what the guy's doing. So,
Okay, so now we're going to move on to another star of boxing, probably arguably the biggest global star in boxing at the moment, and Canelo Alvarez. Obviously, he's coming off the back of another dominant win, and he's trying to unify the division against Caleb Plant. How it's a similar question to the Usyk Joshua, but it seems that always before a Canelo fight, the media and Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, whoever he's fighting, will talk about the competitor, the opponent in the ring, and say, look, he's got a great chance. This will be the person to beat Canelo again and end this dominance. And it obviously every fight he just comes out and destroys and dominates from round to round. Is Caleb Plant the final person that can stop Canelo, or will it be another whitewash? Greg, what do you think?
I think that Canelo could play with Caleb Plant. I think Caleb Plant is an easier fight than Callum Smith. I think it's an easier fight than Billy Joe Saunders. I think Caleb Plant is a good fighter, but I've seen some of his comments about Saunders and Smith, basically saying that the elite fighters are from America, and I've got to be honest, that kind of pissed me off a wee bit, because I think in boxing, it doesn't matter where someone comes from, Kazakhstan or Pontypridd in Wales, so well, like I mentioned there, got to just respect the guy and where he's from. Like, it doesn't matter if someone's good, they're good. And I just think Canelo beats Caleb Plant up, and I think he does it with relative ease. So yeah, my prediction is Canelo with relative ease.
Are you the same, Doey? Do you think it'll be another whitewash?
Yeah, totally. Canelo's too good in every department. Like he's faster, he's stronger. Yeah, probably. He's more intelligent, and this is no disrespect to Caleb Plant, because it doesn't really matter within reasonable, weights what fighter you name. Like, I just don't like the Billy Joe Saunders thing. When Billy Joe Saunders beat Lemieux years ago, I'm not a big fan of Billy Joe Saunders as a person and stuff like that. But as a fighter, when he beat Lemieux, I was thinking, okay, like, this guy is serious, and there's potential here that he could, outbox Canelo a little bit. But when they came to actually meet him, everything Canelo does is better than what Billy Joe Saunders did, and that just got proved. He was above in every department, and that's Canelo. He's better than every contender in every department. So I just don't see, within reason, until we're talking 2, maybe 3 divisions up or whatever, I don't see who can stop him.
Greg, if you were in Caleb Plant's corner, what would you be telling him? What would you be saying is these are the areas we could perhaps pick Canelo apart and perhaps maybe get that victory? Because obviously he's going to go into it thinking he has a chance. So
yeah, that's a really difficult question, Sam. I think Canelo seems his biggest problem is the boxers. Someone can box and move. Canelo doesn't really seem to like that, but Billy Joe Saunders tried that, and it was a tight fight. I just had Canelo up by a few in, but I think you've got to be able to box. I think you've got to have a bit of sting in your shots. I think if you're going to box on the back foot, you've got to carry a bit of a shot to make Canelo think, well, I'm not going to try that again without being careful. So it's really difficult what I would tell Caleb Plant. I mean, what's the height difference? I think Canelo's about 5'8". Is Caleb Plant at 5'10", 5'11" or something? Not 100%.
I think it's similar heights.
Yeah, I think he just needs to be slick. I think if I'm in Caleb Plant's corner, I'm just saying, be slick, don't stand your ground, use the ring. That's the best tactic you can use. I would say, but it's going to be a hard night for him, really hard night.
I think for me, the scariest thing about Canelo is I think if this was another fighter, we could be talking about complacency and maybe he won't get up for a Caleb Plant fight. But Canelo seems to just, whoever it is, turn up in incredible shape with the best training camp and treat every fight like it's the Floyd Mayweather fight again. It doesn't matter whether it's Callum Smith, whether it's Billy Joe Saunders, and now Caleb Plant. He will fight everyone exactly the same. I think that's what makes him scary and even harder to actually predict against, because there isn't going to be that off night. Canelo doesn't really have off nights. We talked about the Mayweather fight earlier, but in reality, he was what, 22, 23. Mayweather was in his prime. Like, he got handpicked for that fight by Mayweather, like you were saying earlier. That's the difference. I don't think Canelo will come into any fight underprepared or looking down on his opponent or thinking his opponent's lesser. I think he will be 100% for every single fight, and that is what makes him so scary and a pound for pound great.
He's a true boxing gentleman. He totally believes in himself, but he has respect for all his opponents. If you look at like Callum Smith or Billy Joe Saunders, he didn't care. He didn't care about fighting them. He was like, keep listening, all these guys are good, without your problems. And Canelo was like, yeah, good fighter, but I'm better. I mean, you've just got to respect that. He's a one in a lifetime fighter. He's the first, well, you had GGG and things, but every generation seems to have a tremendous fighter. You had Roy Jones, you had Floyd Mayweather, and I think this generation now, I think it's Canelo. I think it's just
Where would you, Doey, like to see Canelo go? Let's presume, without being disrespectful to Caleb Plant, he wins this fight comfortably. Obviously, he's unified the division there. Where would you like to see him go next? Would you like to see him go back up to light heavyweight or defend his titles?
I'm up for a bit of a freak show now. Like, if he's.
Are you going to say Logan Paul or Jake Paul?
I think Logan Paul stands a really good chance. We're looking for a clickbait title. I'll do it right now, right? Logan Paul knocks out Canelo.
Yeah.
I'm just up for a bit of a freak show from Canelo because, I mean, he won't want to damage his record too much by doing anything that's ridiculous, but he beats anyone in and around him, whether that's a weight above, a weight below, whether it's Caleb Plant, whether it's Triple G again because of age and whatever else, whether it's Demetrius Andrade who's chasing him around and calling him out everywhere. Like, these guys are getting beat. And so I'm up for seeing him go up. Like, go fight. Flipping, who's he talking about now? Is it Bivol and Baturbiev or those sorts of people? Like, go for it. Get up there. Like, there was the Kovalev fight. I think Kovalev, talking about handpicking, I think Kovalev was handpicked. Great fighter, like, really good fighter. Just slightly over that hill. And the Yardic fight might have exposed that a little bit. And they've realised, okay, now's our time. But yeah, why not? Just, if Canelo can do it, I mean, he's not big, is he? So he's only 5'8", so there's going to be a limit to where he can go. But I'm up for seeing a freak show. Just go for it. Like, start taking on some big guys. And if we see him fight Anthony Joshua in a few years, let's just see it. It'll be fun.
Obviously,
I'm joking for the comments. Joking. Canelo's not fighting Josh right now.
From a Derby bias, I want to see him fight Zach Parker at Pride Park. Is that a fight that you guys think can happen?
No, right. No, right. I'm sorry, I'm hijacking this moment. Zach Parker lost to Darryl Williams.
Yeah,
End of story. End of story. Shouldn't be there. Darryl Williams, I'm giving you a shout out on this one. That is the biggest robbery I've ever seen in boxing. But with this said, right, boxing's a game. Like, and the way it works with the belts and the rankings and all that. And Zach Parker has put himself in a really good position. Is he anywhere near that level? No, and that's no disrespect to him. Would I like to see the fight? Yeah, go get your money. Do you know what I mean? Go get paid, man. But I just had to chuck that out there. I'm sorry, Zach Parker. You're probably not watching it, but I am sorry just in case, because I don't want to offend you. But
I think if we hear Eddie Hearn talking about bringing Canelo to the UK, I think there's no better place than Pride Park Stadium in Derby County to bring him and welcome Canelo to the United Kingdom. Well, how the fight goes is a different matter, but I'd like to see it.
yeah, but
okay, so moving on, Jamel Charlo put on another good performance last weekend, and there are talks of Charlo Golovkin. Is that a fight you guys want to see, or is that how do you see that fight going as well? Greg, we'll start with you.
Very quickly to touch point on the last subject. What I would like to see Canelo do next is I want to see him get up to Regis. I want him to get up to cruiserweight. I don't think Regis is a huge cruiserweight, so that's where I would like to see him going. It's a big chance. But back on point, Charlo GGG. I've declared declared my love for Canelo, but I'm now going to show that I'm fair when it comes to boxing. I think that they waited until they seen a split. I think Golovkin before they took that fight. I don't think it was Canelo that waited. I think it was Golden Boy, and I think it was his management team. Would I like to see GGG and Charlo? Golovkin, I don't know, man. He's not looked to sell the last 2 or 3 fights. He is, 39 now. Charlo is a good fighter, and he does get hit a little bit too much. Golovkin's a guy you don't want to get hit by. I would like to see it, and I think the reason I would like to see it is it would tell us a lot about Golovkin and what he's got left. If Golovkin's got 70 or 80%, he'll knock Charlo out. If he doesn't, he'll hang him up.
Yeah, what about you, Doey? Is that a fight you want to see?
Yeah, I agree. I agree, spot on there for me. That yeah, it is a fight I want to see, but then it's one of those fights where I want to see it based. I almost want to know what the outcome is first, because I don't want to see a Charlo fighting an over the hill Triple G and Triple G comes out with like a loss or a bit of a. He's not going to take a big beating, but I don't want to see that. Like it would almost look disrespectful. Like if Charlo comes and he fights like a shadow of Triple G's former self, I don't know. It's not so good for Triple G. It's good for Charlo's record. I'd like to see it with Greg there. An 80% Triple G is enough for me. I think he's too good, too strong, too tough. Probably the hardest chin in ever. So yeah, I don't know.
I like that ever.
I mean, I don't know. I just want to. I would like to see it, but I don't want to see Triple G being tarnished by it. Like where he comes out of it looking like he's washed. But
When
it's
I
a good
read
fight.
when I read that this fight was happening, that's kind of the impression that I got. It was kind of like matchmaking where the Charlo brothers are, especially in America, maybe not here in the UK as much, but they're being promoted, and I think it's Showtime are like pushing them so hard in America that a Golovkin fight, if Charlo can find a way to beat Golovkin, like as you say, I think that just catapults him to the next level. The same way AJ beating Klitschko here, they're similar ages at the time. That beating that the old guard and the best from the old guard can really catapult your career to the next level, to the point where you could even see Charlo being talked about in the UK, where right now, like we talk about going on the street and asking people about fighters. I think you could ask 100 people in the UK high street and not one would know who Jamel Charlo is. So I think in that sense, it's the perfect time to fight somebody like that and move away from these good world level fighters, but not the names of a Golovkin. And having that under your cap could catapult Charlo into the even bigger fights. And obviously, moving to the lightweight division, I'm going to let you guys become Eddie Hearn and matchmakers now. So obviously, we've got the 5 key players in the super lightweight division. You've got Gervonta Davis, Teofimo Lopez, Vasily Lomachenko, Ryan Garcia, and Devin Haney. If you were Top Rank or Eddie Hearn, Greg, which fights would you want to see and put together? I know as a fan, we might want to see different fights, but if you were a promoter, how would you match those 5 up?
Yeah, I think that if Loma beats Nakatani on Saturday night, I think he's got unfinished business with Teofimo Lopez. I think that we need to see that again. I think all of those guys in their prime, I don't think any of them live for Lomachenko. I do think Teofimo Lopez is a much, much better fighter than I thought he was. But for me, a match Teofimo and Loma. Devin Haney, I want to see Devin Haney in with someone that's a little bit split. I'd maybe throw Devin Haney in with like a Richard Comey. See how he gets on. He gets on there. Ryan Garcia, I want to see Ryan Garcia and against someone that's tough and can take a shot. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think who that might be.
Gervonta Davis is one that's been put out there. If he wins on Saturday night, Davis and Garcia.
I'll give you guys a curveball. He's a weight up, but I do believe that he could make lightweight. Why not throw Garcia in with Baranchik that fought Josh Taylor, or the dude that just beat Baranchik. It was an absolute humdinger of a fight. His name's not coming to me now, but there was like 3 or 4 knockdowns in the fight. I think it was the last fight for Baranchik. I think he gets stopped in the 5th round, but I think we need to see Devin Haney and with someone that's slick his own style, and I think we need to see Ryan Garcia and with someone that can take a shot and give him problems.
What about you, Doey? What would you be doing if you were?
I think the great thing is, if you're a promoter, from a promoter's perspective, it's one of those ones they can cut it up whichever way they want, and it comes out good. Like, it doesn't matter if Tank and Teofimo get in there. It doesn't matter if Tank and Lomachenko get in there. It doesn't matter if Lomachenko fights Lopez again. Like, it doesn't matter. It all comes out good. I think that Tank Davis will win this weekend. I think he's got to be fighting a Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez, Lomachenko. He's got to be fighting one of those next. Lopez Lomachenko, I want to see that again. I thought Lomachenko was going to win. I didn't realize Lopez had enough about him to get that result there. So I'm so happy with that lightweight division, that it has the potential to do anything. On a UK perspective, though, a fight I would love to see in the UK, Lee Selby and Luke Campbell. Like, why not? Like, that's such a sort of good domestic sort of fight. That fills out a card like it's a chief sort of support. I don't know, I think that's pretty good. Those guys both want to get back in there. Like, Selby believes he beat Kambosos Jr., who's up next for Teofimo. Luke Campbell did himself like no disgrace at all when he fought Garcia. So, give those guys a chance. Let them boost themselves and throw themselves back in the mix. But yeah, that lightweight division, whichever way you cut it, comes out good for me. I'll watch any of them. So it's good times there.
That's a great fight. That's a great fight, though, to see Selby and Campbell, and I think the loser's finished. I think the loser needs to fight. I think that's a great fight. That's definitely a chief support on a card, 100%.
It gives them one more, doesn't it? Like, let's say, and push my bias to the side, let's say Luke Campbell wins comfortably, right? And Luke Campbell's quality. He's got every right to say, I've just beaten, former world champion, guy debatably beat Kambosos Jr. and so on. He puts himself back up there for either one more roll of the dice at a world title or certainly a payday. So get those guys out there and, make it happen.
I'm not sure I could see Luke Campbell fighting for another world title after the Lomachenko, and you've had 2 shots at it now. Like, how often do we see fighters lose twice and not get that shot again? Unless it is, but I do think the other names we've mentioned that he hasn't fought won't really, because it isn't a good scalp, is it? If Loma and Garcia have already beaten Campbell, for example, it isn't a good win for Tank. It isn't a good win for Teofimo. It's not that name. It doesn't hold the same weight it did when Lomachenko beat him, and then when Garcia beat him in the fashion that he did. In my opinion, it doesn't really hold that same weight where we can look at it and go, that was a really, really good win and showed where Ryan Garcia is.
Yeah, on Luke Campbell, I think he's unlucky. He's just been a victim of time, because if 7 years ago, Luke Campbell's a world champion, give or take time. But because he's trying to become a world champion where there's too many world champions and not enough belts, which is weird in boxing, I know. Like, there's too many world level guys there. Not too many, but there's a lot of world level guys. He just isn't going to break through and beat one of them. But if Luke Campbell's 5-6 years ago, he's a world champion. So he's a victim of time. Does he come again? Maybe do a George Groves, catch one late on? I don't know.
Mark my words, Luke Campbell's next step is a final eliminator at super lightweight, and when Josh Taylor vacates and moves up, Luke Campbell will fight for world title super lightweight. Remember who told you.
We'll bookmark that in. I think I agree with both of you. I think the Lopez, I think it's so strange that Lopez and Lomachenko aren't rematching. Obviously, you had the talk with the shoulder, and Lomachenko wasn't healthy for that fight. And for Lopez to then not give him, I know he had the problem with Top Rank and ESPN, but to then not give an immediate rematch to a fighter of Lomachenko's stand-in. And I watched today, actually, ESPN put out a documentary on Lomachenko. It's actually a really good watch. And it just shows like his mindset going into this fight. And you see how injured he was in that fight with Teofimo Lopez, and he could barely like throw with his left hand because his shoulder was basically finished. So I think that is a fight that I think on the night I was up and down on who won. I think Lopez won, but I think it was closer than a lot of people give Lomachenko credit for. And it's a fight I do want to see, but that lightweight division, it's murderer's row with the amount of fighters in that division and the matches you can make. It's I know we don't like to talk about UFC and boxing, but it's UFC level of matchmaking where you've got like 10 guys in a division, and if you can get them fighting, there's just matchups all over the place where you could have pay-per-views all over the like month or over a 6-week period, and just have like a pay-per-view every month just with lightweight fighters on. And I don't think we've had that in a division in boxing for quite some time. Maybe if you take out the heavyweight division.
Well, you look at my prediction video for this week on Lomachenko and Nakatani. I respect everybody's opinion, but one guy had wrote on it, you predicted a 1-12 winner, and there's not really an outcome. Lomachenko basically tore his shoulder in his last fight against Lopez. He's fighting a Japanese guy who's double the size of him, who gave Teofimo Lopez absolutely fit. That's not my problem if the bookies price Lomachenko on merit alone at 1-12. This could go horribly wrong if he's not got the same shoulder or the same arm. This big guy could just walk through him because he's too big, and Lomachenko's got one arm. But yeah, I agree with both of you. I just think it's a once in a lifetime division, around about 135, 140 at the moment. It's stunning. The guys who have not even mentioned, like we just progress.
Yeah,
guys, solid fighters.
And what I would hate though is, do you know, when I talk to like old time boxing fans, they love to be like, oh, you don't know what it was like. You know, we had Hagler and Hearns and all, and I obviously just jealous. And it's going to be disgusting if in 10 years' time we're still being like, oh, I wonder if Tank and Garcia are going to fight. And boxing's criminal for that. Wouldn't it be such a waste if in 10 years' time they still haven't like done like a round robin? They all haven't forget about the fear of the zero, you know, the fear of the loss. Forget about it. Like, it would just be good as boxing fans. I'm just desperate to see it happen.
I think the big one there was you get another Pacquiao Mayweather, don't you, where they end up fighting when they're probably not over the hill, but they're getting towards the latter stage of their career. And again, like you say, Doey, I'd hate to have a situation where we see Haney fighting Garcia when they're 34 and it's not got the same pull. But then I also do understand it from a promoter's point of view. These guys are 22, 21, 23, a lot of them, taking out Lomachenko. And a loss to each other right now, where you can probably fill out a few more fights if you're looking at it from the bank perspective and money perspective. They're probably reluctant to get in with each other, even if it's what we want. It could kill a career if you lose 2 fights back to back in rematches. If you're Devin Haney and you lose twice to Ryan Garcia, it's a big hill to climb to get back to the level that you're seen as right now. And I think that's what could stop these fights actually happening.
That's the thing though, Sam. That's for me, boxing pisses all over the UFC, but the reason that the sports are so close in popularity is in UFC, the best fight the best. In boxing, they don't. You think if Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney fought each other, even if one of them loses twice, they're going to earn a fortune. And it's really down to desire after that. Some of these guys in the UFC, they've really got desire when they do get a few defeats. Look at Nate Diaz. The guy who's going to give his best again against anybody. Boxing doesn't really have characters, but for some reason, when a guy loses 2 fights, he loses his soul. And you're thinking, well, get your confidence back. A great example from home is Ricky Burns' career was going nowhere. He had lost to Carl Johansson for the British title, and he fought 5-6 journeymen. Yusuf Al-Hamidi was one of them. He then fought for the Commonwealth title against a relatively unknown African. and before you know it, he was Roman Martinez's mandatory challenger. So, you know, guys need to start believing themselves in boxing. A loss doesn't define you.
That is my biggest peeve with boxing, because I'm a big, I don't say this much in the ESBR chats and stuff, but I'm a massive UFC fan, and it is purely for the reason of you will see the best fight the best every weekend, whether it's 10 fighting 15, whether it's like the big pay-per-view fights, whether it's Adesanya the other weekend fighting, they will all fight. Nate Diaz coming back and fighting Leon Edwards, who Leon Edwards isn't really. He's from Birmingham. He's not well known in the States that much. He's a killer, but he hasn't got that promotional power as some of these guys. But they still just went, I don't care. I'm going to fight him on the weekend. So that's just where boxing, I think, it always has been and it always will be. But it's just that's where it lets itself down sometimes. And like we said, that this lightweight division, I would hate for that to happen again, because you have probably some of the best fighters pound for pound in the world right now in one division. Like, how often do we get that? So to not have that would be criminal in my opinion. So hopefully DAZN pay up everyone, or even Triller at this point. I don't care. Just someone pay like millions of pounds just to get these fights. It doesn't matter at this point.
I know nothing about UFC, just to put that out there, right? And I can't even watch it because
Neither do I.
it sounds weird. It's too violent for me, which I know that sounds weird from what we watch. Do you know when a guy's like knocked out and then they still get a couple more punches in on them? I can't see that. But quick mention though, doing the Welsh bias thing again. The Welsh are quite represented in the UFC. John Phillips, Brett Johns, Jack Shaw. I hope I got all their names right. I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah.
And like John Phillips, literally, again, we talked about before we got on this call. We talked about Jay Harris, who lives 10 minutes like that way. Brett Johns lives like not Brett Johns. John Phillips lives like 6 minutes that way. So the Welsh are doing all right. They're representing in the UFC.
I only know Joanne Calderwood. That's the only one I know. I don't know any other Scottish guys in the UFC. I feel like there is a guy that I really should know, but it's just not a sport that I watch.
Yeah, and that'll be the end of the UFC chat on this roundtable. We don't. A load of people have already commented or turned off at this point just from the mentioning of UFC. So finally, as the final topic of the first roundtable, just wanted to touch on Dillian Whyte, and obviously the heavyweight division, we mentioned it earlier, is quite tied up at the moment. You've got Fury Wilder, and then Joshua Usyk, and then potentially 2 or 3 Fury AJ fights if that happens. Where do you see Dillian Whyte's career going at this point? Because I think he's probably the one in, especially the UK heavyweight scene, where I kind of feel a bit sorry for him. That in any other, we said it earlier with another example, but in any other era, he'd have fought for a world title by now, maybe 2. But because he's been tied up behind all these other heavyweights, he hasn't really had the opportunities, apart from that first AJ fight, which was a big British fight, but at the time they were both young. He hasn't had the chances at a world level. What do you see as his like path moving on after that Povetkin win? Doey, what do you think?
First thing to catch in here is that some people will say that Whyte has had his chances, and as in, final eliminators, and then things happened. Like he chose to not fight Joshua when Joshua was looking for an opponent. When was that? Whenever that was. Go on, when was it?
Was it after the American when Ruiz stepped in for Jarrell Miller?
Yeah. Thank you very much. That was it. Yeah. So when Miller failed his test, people will say Dillian Whyte didn't get. People will say Dillian Whyte had his chance then. Yeah, maybe he didn't have enough time. Maybe the full camp. I don't know. But people will say that. People will say that he turned down fighting Luis Ortiz in a final eliminator. Debatable one. I mean, he was number 1 with the WBC for 2 years. Did he need to? Anyway, so just to sort of appease those guys that Dillian Whyte's had his chances. But where does he go? I think, without being harsh on Dillian Whyte, his best hope is vacated titles. We talked slightly about Luke Campbell earlier on, if you're watching the full length, or in a different video if you're watching the trimmed version. We talked about Luke Campbell, and how does he win a world title? It's probably going to be a vacated title somewhere. And I think it's the same for Dillian Whyte. I could feasibly see, and this is a bit of a random one, I could feasibly see Dillian Whyte fighting Joe Joyce for a vacant world title in 18 months. If Fury loses to Wilder or Joshua, I don't know. I could see it happening.
This is really random, but I do love the Joe Joyce Takam fight that got announced this week. I think that is a really good fight for Joe Joyce, especially coming off the back of the Dubois win. I think that's a really good fight. Greg, if you were Eddie Hearn or Dillian Whyte's promoters now, what fight would you be looking at as a potential fight? Obviously, he has to fight on pay-per-view now. He's a pay-per-view star. So how would you match him up with some of the other world heavyweights?
I think he'll be part of the zone now. So I think he'll be part of like a big program in America. From what I'm seeing, Eddie Hearn said his next fight's in America. I would have thought his best path would have been Trevor Bryan, the WBA regular. But Daniel Dubois is on that route now. As we know, he beat Bogdan Dino, and that basically put him in line to fight Trevor Bryan. I wouldn't be surprised if it was someone like Charles Martin or Chaz Witherspoon who fights next in America. But yeah, I think his best shot is if there's an upset in the heavyweight division and the titles all become scattered. I think he could pick up a vacant title shot against someone, but I don't think he beats Joshua. I don't think he beats Usyk. I don't think he beats Fury. So yeah, I think it runs the vacant title now.
Going back to your point, though, about him having chances, I do think, though, he has got a really good resume to say he's never actually fought for a world title. He's got a resume of some better than some fighters who actually won the heavyweight titles. I think that is something you do have to give him credit for, even though it's not for a world title. He is still fighting your Povetkin's, your Parkers, your Whites twice. He is still getting in there in really competitive, maybe not 50-50 fights, but at least 60-40 fights.
Yeah. And just a correction before someone says it, Chisora twice. He was not White twice. But yeah, I'm aware that we get these comments. Greg, I don't know where Greg's going to be on the screen, right? Greg drags the negative comments out from people. Yeah, he does have a good resume, a very good resume. Not to be overlooked in there, and it's been shadowed because of the drug. I don't know how to word this legally correct, right? But the whole drug situation. The Oscar Rivas fight. Yeah. The Oscar Rivas fight was a good win. Oscar Rivas had him going though. Joseph Parker, that's a good win. Let's not forget Joseph Parker was a former world champion. Not a prolific world champion, but still was a former world champion. Parker nearly had him though. The fight's 30 seconds longer. Maybe he doesn't win that. So you're right in that he's got a lot of 50-50, 60-40 type fights on his record. I just want the guy to get a shot. I wanted him to fight Wilder. Yeah, that's what I wanted. So, but yeah, my little summary: vacated title somewhere along the line. I think that's what happens with Dillian Whyte.
I know, Greg, you mentioned it recording, but that Andy Ruiz Dillian Whyte fight is a fight that I think I'd love to see personally. I think that fight just has asked so many questions of both fighters, and just if you win that fight, there's no way you shouldn't be fighting for a world title if you win that fight.
100%. I totally agree with you. But if I'm Eddie Hearn, I'm keeping Dillian Whyte away from Andy Ruiz. I think Andy Ruiz would stop Dillian Whyte. I think it's a firefight, and it'd be down to who's got the better chin. Yeah, Andy Ruiz went down in his last fight. He went down against Joshua, got up, shook it off. I think he holds a better chin than Dillian Whyte, and I think it's a firefight, and I think it would knock Dillian Whyte out.
Especially under Eddie Reynoso now as well, Andy Ruiz. I think that has changed. I think maybe a year ago I would have said Dillian Whyte probably knocks out Andy Ruiz, but I think now it's a lot closer. I personally still think Dillian Whyte would probably come away with the win, but I think it would definitely be close, especially with Ruiz under Eddie Reynoso.
Yeah, fair point.
Did anyone else have anything to add to that? No?
No.
I think it's a brilliant chat. I think we need to do this more often. Yeah,
I think we are planning on getting these out quite regularly. If you have made it to this part of the video, thank you. please do like and subscribe. It really, really does help the channel, and we do appreciate it a lot. Check out Greg's videos. I don't know when the next one will be out. It'll probably be next week. If some of these clips come out next week, they'll be the week after, because I don't think we're doing one next week. Obviously, we post pretty much daily boxing content on the channel, so please just give it a watch, give it a like, and subscribe. We do really appreciate it. And thank you for watching. Thanks, Doey. Thanks, Greg, for your time. And we will see you later.